This week, we are continuing our conversation with Molly McGrath about the strategies in her new book called Fix My Boss. And today we're going to talk about what happens when we've tried this or we've tried things like it and it doesn't work. What do we do next? As well as the transformational benefits of when we try it and it does work. If you haven't listened to part one, you'll want to go back to last week's part one with Molly McGrath. And hey, we're glad you're here. Whether today's your first time listening or you're a regular, welcome. Would you do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast? Give us a rating on whatever platform you're on. This really helps us find more listeners like you. And now to our conversation, part two with Molly McGrath. Welcome to the Grounding and Growing Leadership Podcast, where everyone is a leader and leadership starts with you. I'm Tara.
And I'm Pamela.
Thank you for listening and inviting us along on your leadership journey.
We are so excited to welcome back to the podcast today, Molly McGrath. She is an author. She is an expert in the area of being able, I'm going to say, Molly, maybe I'll give you a new term here, that you are the bridge builder between the employee and the boss to be able to interpret what they actually have to hear from one another to be able to affect the bottom line, to be able to affect the culture of the work that they are in. Like, you are the bridge builder to be able to make those relationships happen, communication happen. Is that a fair thing to describe what it is that you do for not only the legal industry, but several others as well?
Oh my goodness. I did my job then, because it's exactly the essence and the mission that I am on. So I'm delighted to hear that you picked that up.
Yeah, fantastic. So I love the title of your latest book. You have 3 books that are out, and Molly's latest book is actually called Fix My Boss. And if you haven't listened to part 1 of our podcast, you need to go back and listen, because can you imagine, everyone, you being an employee and your boss handing you this book that says, here is how to fix me. And what a gift, what a humble gift, first of all, for a boss to realize that we come with our own lens. We come with what we feel is right in the world, but that's our world. And when we hire someone, they see through different strengths. We hire them for their different strengths often because that's not what we have. And so to be able to have a self-aware, humble enough boss that would hand us a book like this, I can only tell you from a mental health perspective that this would build such incredible trust. And so most likely people who are listening today have experienced an environment where that has not been the case. And when we ended our podcast last time, we really spoke to the fact that there have been some unhealthy, even toxic cultures where there could have been some pretty serious wounds that would have happened within the workplace. And Molly, in your experience, maybe you can share some of the stories that you have heard from employees that you said who jumped ship over and over again, because we don't leave companies, we leave those who are managing directly over us, or potentially that boss. Maybe lead us into that discussion, Molly, from your experience.
Yeah. And I love it. You say that it's a very humble gift for bosses and leaders to hand to their team, because when you do hand it to your team member, they're probably going to have a little bit of hesitancy because of their past. So in the past, bosses and business owners most have read books. And I hear this from team members that, oh gosh, my boss is going to another conference. They're going to come back with the binder and dump it on my desk and the book to fix and change and everything. But then we start digging into it, and then we either change course or they resist what we're trying to implement. So that's really the trauma, where people have gotten a tiny bit of an opening, or maybe they weren't invited to an opening to have a voice within your job and your business and somebody else's business. And then you've made a suggestion and you got shot down. Sometimes like flat out abuse, where what are you, stupid? Like I have heard that from employees over and over again. Or whenever anything starts with, why did you do, and I talk about this in the book, it's a trauma trigger for a lot of people. Maybe not even in the workplace. It might be in the home, where the message that they're communicating, that the employee's hearing, is you're bad, you're in trouble, And so they're going back to their last frame of reference for that. So it's very difficult. And I know you all talk and teach a lot about trust, but it's very difficult for an employee to trust that. So they have their guards up. They're picking from their past, rightfully. But I've heard that from people over and over again, or they've gotten the olive branch and they've tried to implement it and they get no response. So their abandonment issue comes up. I did all this work and it's not important. I can't even get the grace and the respect of a response to this. Or I bring it and they rip it apart or they change everything. So why bother?
So, Molly, if you're in that place as an employee and you've experienced that kind of abuse, do you recommend that they stay somewhere where they're being treated that way? Or is it a good idea for them to move on? Or how do they build that bridge if they want to lead up and make things different?
I do recommend that they stay in the beginning because I always talk about you're either running to or running from something. So it's very difficult for you to blame it on the boss. And here we go again. Another evidence of that. So I'm going to leave. It's a toxic work environment or negative or whatever stories we have in our head from our past. How about we gamify this? Guess what? It's an employee-driven market. So if you get fired, guess what? You'll have a job by tomorrow. The unemployment rate is under 2%. Like you're okay. You're going to have a job and you're a rock star. So just know that. So you have nothing to lose. It's almost like where they teach if you're getting on stage or walking in a conference, walking to close a client, pretend like you have $1 million in the bank. And your confidence in the way you show up is so much better. And lo and behold, you close the client. And so I tell them, Matt, let's gamify it and let's have fun because this is about you growing your confidence. And so if you just leave right now because your boss is a jerk or it's a toxic work environment or what have you, you're going to repeat this pattern. And so how about you get your confidence up and how you get your confidence up? And guess what? Bosses are desperate for an employee with confidence. And so you keep doing it and have fun with it.
1,000%. They are hungry for someone who's confident and who will stand up and take the work on. But this isn't a message that we hear in our culture, Molly. This isn't a message we're getting right now in the environment, in the culture. It's, hey, for your own mental health, you should leave. Or don't stay in a toxic workplace, which, I mean, in some cases, that's probably true. So how long should they stay and what kind of clues do they look for that it's possible for them to gain confidence here?
Oh, I love this question. Yes, I say try everything that I teach you within the book and my teachings for the firms that I coach up until the point when you know you have resistance. How long they should stay is when they have the courageous conversation. And so when they can communicate, here are all the things that you wanted me to take over, to step up and lead, to be able to delegate to me. Here is what I've done. And here's what I've tried to implement. And here is where I've been met with resistance or flat out abusive behavior. Because the truth will set you free. If you could have this courageous conversation with your boss, your leader, supervisor, whoever it is, and anchor to the facts without emotions, and you can anchor to it. And if you are still getting hit with, too bad, so sad, it's my way or the highway, it's time to leave. But guess what? When you have that conversation eyeball to eyeball, and you are so grounded in your own confidence, and you say, clearly, I have nothing to work with here. You invited me to step up and lead. You invited me to take up more ownership, to give you the entrepreneurial freedom you deserve. And you are resisting everything that I'm bringing here. And I'm sensing a lack of trust. And that's okay. But this is no longer going to work for me. And so I am going to leave. And you have that conversation with them. You will be so incredibly confident when you leave there. But if you just leave because it's a toxic environment and you didn't try to hone their own skills for yourself, that pattern's never going to stop.
Yeah, I love that you are saying leave while speaking what is true. sticking to the facts and saying, here was what you asked for me to do. Here's what I did do. And apparently this isn't truly what you are wanting. You're not in the space of delegating. I want to speak just to the other side that if they do own it, if they do recognize that, wow, yes, this is what I wanted, but I'm having a hard time letting go of control. That repair that can happen when somebody actually owns where they become self-aware, there is a greater strengthening that comes in that repair work that is so strong, because that's that humility to say, boy, you're right. I actually did say this and I took it back. And you are so brave to be able to voice it. Thank you. And as we say in grounded leadership, we are all practicing. And so your boss is going to practice handing these things over and isn't always going to get it right. And so as an employee, to be able to speak respectfully and humbly and to say, you may need to continue practicing giving this over to me, but here's how I want to help with that. And if they own it, it actually strengthens and repairs at a place where trust is built even more.
I love that so much. And I always am a big fan of gamification. Have fun with it and take the heavy and hard out of it.
Yeah.
And when you were talking, it just reminded me, I'll tell a quick story. I have a law firm that I'm working with, paralegal, attorney, legal assistant, marketing coordinator, the whole gamut. And the team members would call me constantly and complain about the attorney. They hijack every meeting. They change everything. They take us off course. I'm like, and so what are you doing in this situation? We're just sitting there rolling our eyes. I'm like, okay, so you're part of the problem. And he's hiring you to help process, systematize this business, what have you. And he's the biggest bottleneck. So last Monday, I get into their weekly team meeting. I'm like, here's the deal, Sam. You're killing your team and they have so much work they need to get done. There's revenue attached to it. There's no money in the bank. And right now, Pat, if she's left alone for 4 hours and you stop interrupting her, can close a $38,000 matter. She needs 4 hours worth of work. You're not allowed to talk to her. You're not allowed to email her, and made everyone agreement, what have you. Pat got the fee done in 3 hours, not 4. And so much so, she said in 36 years, that's the first time that Sam never said good morning to me, because he was so afraid if he started talking to me, it would take me off track. Now, Sam had accountability too, because he had 3 files that he had to close and do work, but he kept abandoning it. And I use this story because truth resides in agreement. So first we need to agree, what are we going to hold each other accountable for? But this firm, before working with me, was constantly frustrated. The team was disengaged. They did not have money in the bank, what have you, because the boss was leading the whole thing, and he would come in and change the direction of the meeting, change the agenda, show up late for the meeting, cancel the meeting so often, and they weren't reaching goal. The team weren't getting their work done, and they were so completely frustrated, but they weren't willing to use their voice. They weren't willing to hold him accountable, but it wasn't in a place of cutting him off. It was holding their feet to their dreams, and often in spite of ourselves.
Wow.
And how much more empowering that posture that we end up taking when we give up on someone, especially in that work environment and that dynamic, is learned helplessness. Oh, I guess I can't do anything. And we end up taking the victim posture as employees.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is going to suck our energy, drain our motivation, and we go backwards in our potential when we take on that victim mentality. And so what you're really talking about is true empowerment, Molly, that even if the culture is not okay, and I do think we have a lot of employees seeking the perfect culture right now, but the truth is what you're saying, and we agree, is that every employee has opportunity to impact and improve culture with how they show up, not just the leader. So yes, the leader has a lot to do with the overall tone of the organization, but you have an opportunity to influence that leader.
Absolutely. And change the tone. I don't think leaders and business owners really understand what culture is when you start interviewing, and employees too. This is such a toxic work culture. show me what the picture is for a positive work culture. What does this mean? And it's so fascinating to me because it really boils down to consistent communication where everyone has a seat at the table and their voice matters. It doesn't mean that we're going bowling every fourth Friday. It doesn't mean that it's very rarely is it even about money.
Yeah.
It is about we are locking arms and we are all anchored to true north. We're clear on where true north is and what part of it I play and what are the rules when I feel like we're going sideways, when I can come and I can express, hey, we're going to be in trouble here, where I get the permission to have a voice and it's actually received. That's culture. It's not what the TJ Maxx home signs say.
I also would love to just ask Molly, how do you see this? How have you heard from these entrepreneurs that this sort of good work, this is good work to do because it affects and it ties to the bottom line? It takes time and it's an investment, but how does it affect the bottom line? And how have you heard stories of how this is really paying off?
I love that. I'll start with what I believe the most profitable and important position in any business, the receptionist, the director of first impression. They're usually the lowest paid and they're usually treated like an entry level position because that's what we've all been taught. And I'm just need a receptionist. So it starts there. When you can empower somebody who's answering your phones to start tracking and measuring every phone call that comes into the office, start looking at the life cycle of a lead, start coming to your weekly team meeting with reporting and start giving data and information and very clear on their key performance indicators and how they contribute to the bottom line. If your receptionist answering the phone is not doing a great job, your salesperson's irrelevant. They have no one to meet with. They have an empty calendar.
Yeah.
And so when each person has clear key performance indicators and their job description is alive and in action, it's not collecting dust on a shelf, and they understand the value that they bring, it impacts the bottom line. Absolutely impacts the bottom line. Because if they're really aware at the front of the lines and they're given the data and information, imagine what it's going to do to transform marketing. Yeah, it's great. We get 100 phone calls a day or 100 phone calls a week, but of them, only 2 people are booking appointments. How much money are we spending on marketing? How much time is it taking to chase these leads? How much time is it taking in cancellations, reschedules, no-shows? Like it goes on and on. And when people really understand the value they bring to impacting the bottom line, and I'm not saying you have to open up QuickBooks and share your P&L, but when they understand their role and goal and how it impacts that, they'll take a bullet for you.
Yeah. And at that point, they're not doing sales. They really become evangelists for the company. So when they see it from that point, when they know how to tell the story, and when they understand their role is impacting the bottom line, I feel much more excited to be a storyteller for how we can help, how we can support, how we can serve. If I'm hired as a receptionist and someone is telling me I'm doing sales, that might even hold me back. But if I understand that I'm really a storyteller, I'm here to do the same amount of support or offer that support, that also empowers me. And then I'm not held back by a word that I don't connect with. Instead, I'm propelled by a story I do connect with.
And propelled by the results. I have a team member right now, and that's receptionist on the front line. And when they started tracking everything, and they were having an average of 12 no-shows for sales meetings, initial consultation. And when they figured out that what impact they make for people actually getting to their meetings and not canceling, doing confirmation calls, care calls, things of that nature, this firm is clipping 2 a month, went from 12 to 2 because of this one position, because she understands the value she brings and the difference maker that she is. It's not about the money. It's not about the bonus. She's just so incredibly grateful that we can impact more families because they are actually getting into the conference room.
Yeah. So you're able to provide clarity about their role and how they connect with the overall goal of the organization and the purpose of the organization. And you're empowering them then to lead up, and they're shifting out of that victim mentality to one of true ownership and hope. And you said something earlier, Molly, and I actually don't remember if it was earlier this episode or the first that we recorded with you. You talked about the business owner finally gets sick of trying to do it all themselves.
Mhm.
So how does a leader or an owner know that they're at that point? Like, what are some of the symptoms that they tend to be experiencing at that point? And what's a good first step for them? We talked about a good first step for an employee is to get this book and to think through that. But what's a good first step for the leader?
I love this question. I just had this conversation with the client. You don't even want to walk into your building. You don't want to walk into your office anymore because you know there's going to be a line of people delegating back up to you or problems. You break out literally in hives when you have to open up your email. You're the owner or the C-suite and you have the Sunday scaries. You are expecting consistent disappointment from your people and you're not delegating because you're like, why bother? Nobody does it right. And it comes back to me. It's easier for me to do it myself. You're feeling frustrated all the time. You're feeling anxious all the time. You're feeling stressed out more often than not. That is an indicator. And you're resentful because you're paying people and you may not be getting a paycheck every other week. You may own a job and not own a business. If you're feeling any of this, it is an indicator that what's the saying? If there's one finger pointing out, there's three more pointing back at me. It might be that you might be the biggest bottleneck within your business. So if you're feeling that's an indicator. The next step, it's so simplistic where you at your next team meeting, and if you don't have them scheduled and wired on your calendar, get one scheduled. Be very clear. I'm scheduling this meeting. I'm super excited. This is going to be a strategic retreat for us. Nobody's getting fired. And then you come to that meeting and you wave the white flag and you say, I am really clear. I feel frustrated all the time. I know I'm not delegating. You're vulnerable. And you share all those things that you're feeling. I just had a attorney this morning show up in our weekly Monday meeting and she was bawling her eyes out. I can't do it anymore. I just can't. And she was embarrassed. And I'm watching. She only has but she has 3 full-time people on her. I'm watching them and they're all sitting up. They are leaning in and they're like, let's go. Give it to us. We're holding the puke bucket. Give us everything that's waking you up at 2:00 in the morning. And they did. In 45 minutes, we had it all off her plate. They were going to take the next right move to get things in action. So she was leaving to go to a conference and she felt just to see her face after. But it starts with vulnerability because guess what? Your team's picking up on it and you're not fooling them. They see you stressed out. They see that you resent them. They see that, and I'm being a little dramatic about it, but when you're feeling the niggle internally, I always say you're responsible for the energy you bring in a room and you leave in the room, and people are picking up on it. So give voice to it, say it and name it, and then you can do something about it.
Molly, I could just stand on my chair and clap.
Yes.
Preach. Through COVID, we have seen burned out business owners. We have seen people, and I don't want to discount the fact that there are some real staffing challenges that have led to some really hard times for business owners. And they are maybe still operating in that survival mode and don't need to anymore. And they have people that they can rely on and can come back to. And as a business owner, then they are in that victim mentality too. And I think this work that you do, Molly, in this book has a potential to save businesses and to shape lives. And it's important work to help people get over this hump so that they can work better together, so that they can enjoy their work and do good work together. It's important. And make money.
And be profitable. I just want to say something real quick. I want to grab onto this. Another indicator, if you are having real staffing issues and challenges, and I love that you brought up COVID, that's an indicator that you need to stop, drop, and roll, because the businesses that I've worked with, Some of them have come to me in that place, but I'm like, don't ask the question you don't want the answer to. You're the biggest problem. You have to change your culture. Anybody who is really implementing what we're saying right now, they don't have staffing troubles. They don't. And if you do, that's another indicator that you might be stuck in this vicious cycle.
Yeah, so good. Molly, we've covered so many things in these last 2 podcasts. And if you haven't already, make sure you go back to the first one. But you are such a wealth of information. And sometimes it takes just asking the right question to pull it out of a guest. So I just want to ask this final question of you. Is there anything that we should have asked you that we didn't ask you that you want to make sure that our audience knows today?
I love that question. The question I would say, is it possible? Is it really possible to have this dream team that we're talking about right now be profitable, have clients that are walking ambassadors and love us? And my answer is yes. You're making it so much harder than it needs to be if you're an entrepreneur or a leader that is stressed out. And I get it, really stressed out and feeling like you are alone. Your team is silently waiting, begging for you to open up the door, call a meeting, and bring them in and say, I'm willing to do this a different way. What, from your perspective, and this is the number one question you go back and ask your team, what's not working right now? And be quiet. And if your team's quiet and they're not just giving it all there, then it will tell you that you have lack of trust. And you have to start with repairing the relationship with your people.
Yes. Molly, we probably didn't ask it because we do trust work. And so we know it's possible, but it is, you're right, it's not possible unless they're willing to be vulnerable and do that trust work.
Yeah.
So we want to encourage everyone. Fix My Boss is available on Amazon. You can go to fixmyboss.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Fixmyboss.com. And you have a number of resources once you've bought the book that people can go and download. And we just want to thank you for your work. We want to thank you for being here today. And I know someone's going to be inspired to take a different look at their role, their job, because they were listening. So thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, and thank you both for the amazing work that you're doing as well.
Thanks everyone for listening. Let us know what you think.
Come on.